Hello, my name is Mindy Capaldi. As you can see on this slide there, I'm a program director in the Directorate for STEM Education. That's a new name for our directorate with acronym EDU, and I'm in the Division of Undergraduate Education. And I'm happy to be here today to talk to you all about the IUSE program, and specifically the teacher preparation track, I guess you could say, of IUSE or aspect of IUSE. I might be joined by a colleague, Jennifer Ellis, at some point, but I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So first and foremost, I wanted to let you know there is a new IUSE solicitation. It's pretty new. I think just came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, so you might not be aware if you're even familiar with the IUSE program. Not too much changed in it, but there were some changes with the deadlines and funding amounts. So I wanted to just straight off the bat point out the next IUSE deadline is January 18th, so that's only for level 1 proposals, and then there's another deadline in July. So as you're listening as we go along, know there's that amount of time before proposals would be due. There's also a new PAPPG, that's the NSF Proposal and Awards Policies and Procedures Guide that's coming out soon. So we're changing a few things up. There's nothing really significant changing, but some important things. Okay, so first let me talk a little bit about the PAPG. We call it the PAPG. This is a document that is used NSF-wide. So it's not just for our division or just the IUSE program. This is a good reference for any NSF proposal that you might want to submit. It outlines what should go into a proposal. It talks about the budget. It talks about what happens after the award. So it's got a lot of information in it and a lot of information that you might need to look through as you are thinking about writing a proposal or even running a project. So, are you interested in making changes at your institution to improve students' STEM learning and engagement, or using assessment to enhance what's known about effective STEM teaching and learning practices, or especially considering the implications for pre-service STEM teacher preparation? These are very broad questions, but IUSE is actually a very broad program, and so those all apply to IUSE. What we're going to get into today is, think about what do you want to do, how might it fit into IUSE. I'll tell you about IUSE. I'm going to get into the different tracks, the different levels. There's, like I said, it's a very broad program, so there's a lot going on there and a lot of places where your idea or proposal might fit. We'll just get into some additional details, tips for success, and wrap up with resources. And along the way, I'll pause after every few slides and give you time for Q&A, for questions. And so you should be able to post questions, and I'll keep an eye out for that. And when we get to those Q&A slides, I'll stop with kind of my just talking through them and answer some of those questions. Okay, so how do you even get to a proposal stage? How do you go from an idea to a proposal? So maybe right now, or at some point in the next week or two, write down 1 or 2 ideas that relate to improving pre-service STEM teacher education. Things that you wouldn't be able to do just on your own or even just with your institution's resources, something that you need more financial support to do. How do you go from that idea to next steps? Well, there's a few things you can do. You can see, has something similar already provided results? Can you build off of someone else's project or research? So you can do literature searches, you can do NSF award searches. If you just Google NSF award search, it'll take you to our award search page, and you can search, using different keywords or institutions or programs. And you can ask your communities, your organizations that you're involved in, and see what else has been done in that area. Also, going to communities and organizations, professional organizations, can help you find collaborators. Maybe you can find them within your institution. Maybe you need to go outside your institution. Maybe you don't need a collaborator, but it can be helpful. And then you think, which program should it be submitted to? Is IUSE the right fit? Well, one thing to do is read the solicitation. The solicitation is the document that we publish that describes the program, describes what should go into it, gives you all the details for what you need to follow, guidelines to follow, and what to think about as you're putting together your proposal. You can also talk to a program director, someone like me. Send us an email, set up a meeting, and we are happy to talk about your idea, maybe even review a one-page summary of it, and tell you if IUSE is a good fit. More on IUSE. IUSE stands for Improving Undergraduate STEM Education. So that's a broad title. Like I said before, it's a broad program. It really is just all about improving STEM education, improving the quality and effectiveness for undergraduates, which can be pre-service teachers in any STEM field. We want to improve STEM teaching, we want to improve STEM learning, and that can happen in many, many ways. More specifically, IUSE has program goals along developing or adapting or improving evidence-based practices into STEM teaching and learning. So maybe someone else has found some positive results or shown something to be effective, and you're going to build off of that, or maybe even replicate it. We'll talk more about that kind of stuff later on. Maybe you're going to bring recent advances into STEM disciplinary and interdisciplinary knowledge. Maybe you're going to lay the groundwork for institution-wide improvement in STEM teaching and learning. Maybe you're going to collaborate with other institutions to improve STEM teaching and learning. You could broaden participation, institutional capacity. This can involve professional development opportunities for faculty or staff. Pretty much anything that's going to help build the STEM workforce. There are two tracks in the IUSE program. We have one called the Engaged Student Learning track. So this is about development, testing, use of teaching practices or curricular materials, innovations that are engaging students and directly improving their learning, their persistence, their retention in STEM. So it's very student-oriented. We also have the Institutional and Community Transformation track. So this is a bit, maybe more of a larger scale sort of project that you're going to go institution-wide, multi-institution, maybe your disciplinary community, maybe some other sort of community, and you're going to work together to transform STEM education. This slide has a lot on it, and all of this is also in the solicitation. It's just not summarized quite in this table, but it's all in the solicitation. So you can see where first it's split into the tracks. Like I said, there's engaged student learning, institutional and community transformation. Within each track, there's levels. So engaged student learning has 3 levels. There's level 1, which is really kind of introductory, kind of exploratory projects, up to 3 years, $400,000. And that $400,000, that's actually one of the changes with the new solicitation. Up until a couple of weeks ago, or whenever that solicitation was published, that said $300,000. So that budget was increased. Those level 1 proposals have the deadline in January. Level 2, that should say $400,000 up to $750,000. Still 3 years, so you get more money, but at the same amount of time. This is for next stage projects. They're maybe building on more solid results, a little less exploratory, bigger scope, maybe bigger scale. Those projects are due, the deadline is in July. Level 3, also a deadline in July. This is where we really get into a bigger budget, $750,000 to $2 million, and a longer time period. So these are longer term projects up to 5 years. Notice it says up to. For both the budget and the time, don't feel like you have to max those out. Maybe you only need 2 years for a level 2 or 4 years for a level 3. You don't have to go to the full 5 years. There's nothing wrong with choosing the timeline and budget that is appropriate for your project. Institutional and community transformation. So we have two levels here as well. Level 1, similar to engaged student learning, up to 400,000, up to 3 years. Deadline in January. Level 2, this is kind of like a mashup of engaged student learning, level 2 and 3. You can go all the way from 400,000 to 2 million and up to 5 years. So that's a big range of possible projects and scopes of projects. That deadline is going to be in July. Within ICT, that's what we call institutional and community transformation. Within ICT, there's even a capacity building option. This is like us giving you money to write a full proposal for level 1 or level 2. You can be a single institution, get up to 200,000. Multiple institutions get up to 400,000. You can have 1 or 2 years, and that's actually giving you money to prepare for, say, a level 2 ICT proposal. So that can be a really nice support for writing those kind of bigger, broader projects. So let's get a little more into the different tracks, ESL and ICT. Here's some ideas of engaged student learning themes. Maybe you're doing an assessment of a learning method or a teaching practice. This could be in a STEM course. It could be in a pedagogical course for pre-service teachers. You could be doing educational research, for instance, of best practices in STEM teacher preparation. So you can see here we're in parentheses, we're really tying it into the teacher prep idea. You could be looking at developing the workforce, in this case, teachers. This does not mean giving scholarships. That's actually a separate program in our division, the NOISE program. It could be about broadening participation in STEM. You can see just a lot of different ideas here. A lot of things fit into engaged student learning because there's a lot of ways to engage students and help them learn. Similarly, ICT, there's a number of different directions it could go. And maybe you have a focus on looking at technology or distance education methods. This has become even more prominent since COVID. Maybe you're looking at your institution and how you can use evidence-based practices in your institutional strategic planning. Maybe you're looking more broadly at STEM faculty professional development. It doesn't even have to be all STEM. You could be looking at mathematics faculty professional development or engineering faculty professional development. And you could think of the community as that discipline. You could be looking at developing instruments and metrics that will be able to be used by other people. You could be doing a research study on how to enact change in STEM education. Now, it does have to be undergrad education. ICT, some projects are really just how, at the institutional or community level, do we get departments, institutions, organizations to change? All right, so I've already been talking for a while. This is probably a good time for me to pause and see if you all have any questions. So I have an eye on the question box, and I'll give you a bit of time to type and put things in. All right, I don't see any questions yet. We'll have more chances to ask questions later, and maybe, oh, can I see the ESL sample projects? Yeah, I can go back and give you a little more time to look at that. And again, just sample themes. There's a lot of other ideas that could be applicable for engaged student learning and for IUSE. I'll give a little more time to look at this. I know there's a lot on this slide. Oh, you're welcome, Carrie. Can multiple ideas be included in a proposal? You might have to follow up on what you mean by multiple ideas, but there certainly can be multiple aspects of a proposal. Like you can be developing or adapting some sort of curricular material, and also be doing some sort of education research on this. So there can be different aspects in that way. Feel free to follow up in the question if you want to get more specific there. And let's see. Are two-year colleges eligible for partnerships on a proposal? Very much so. We encourage two-year colleges to be partners, and I mean, of course, you can always be the lead in a partnership or just have your own proposal. There's different ways to do collaborative proposals. Sometimes a collaborative can be, there's one lead institution and then they have sub-awards to other institutions. Another way to do collaboration is for each institution to just submit their own kind of proposal and budget. And definitely if you're a two-year college, that is welcome. When you mentioned teachers, did you mean, so for IUSE in particular, it would need to be pre-service teachers, at least generally, because this is for undergraduate STEM students. And so since IUSE is at the undergraduate level, it's usually going to be pre-service teachers. If somehow there are in-service teachers that are fitting into that undergraduate category, then maybe it can apply. You do not have to have a person from education for IUSE proposals. If you have a teacher prep theme proposal, then sometimes that makes sense. But it could be that maybe there's a math education researcher who's in a mathematics department and is teaching pre-service teachers. That would be okay. So it really is, make sure your personnel match what you're trying to do. Do you have the right people with the research expertise? Do you have the right people that are involved with maybe the students of the project or the faculty in the project? So there's no specific requirements for who needs to serve as PI or co-PI for IUSE like there are for some other projects. Will you have an ongoing IUSE grant in the future? IUSE is not going to be going away anytime soon if you're meaning the program itself. Where would research on the possible obstructions to STEM education pathways progress fit? You know, a lot of times something could fit in engaged student learning or ICT, institutional community transformation. You know, read through the solicitation to see more descriptions. Now, I'm going to talk more about them today as well. And you can always talk to a program officer about your specific idea to get more advice on where it might be appropriate. All right, I'll go through a couple more questions and then maybe get back to the slides and we can get some more questions later. Can we combine with any graduate program elements? Let's say if there are any integrated programs. Sometimes that works. If the emphasis is still on undergraduate STEM education, sometimes that does connect to graduate programs, but the emphasis needs to be something related to undergraduate STEM education. So it's not, graduate stuff doesn't necessarily exclude it, and even K-12 isn't necessarily excluded, but it's kind of tangential to the undergrad level. All right, let's do one more question here. What about efforts in improving the mathematics education of pre-service elementary teachers? What category would this be? Maybe looking at the alignment between current courses, learning objectives, and realigning history. I would say that just from reading what you have there, it seems more like engaged student learning because you're looking at really the learning objectives of a course or courses. So it maybe at least would start in engaged student learning for that reason. But again, you can always follow up with more details about your specific ideas and send a one-pager to a program officer like me to double check. Okay, so let me go on and we'll do some more questions pretty soon. All right, more IUSE specifics. Collaborations are encouraged. So this kind of goes back to one of the questions about whether two colleges can collaborate, but this is a little more specific about within the proposal. Collaborations can be across STEM disciplines, colleges just within a university. They can be collaborations across different institutions. They can involve departmental or institutional administrators. Sometimes it's helpful to bring a dean in or something like that, you have the kind of change makers at the institution. It can be helpful to bring in an education researcher if that's going to be a focus of the project. The proposal or the project should have certain elements, and this is pulled from the solicitation for IUSE. So that's where it says Section 2, Program Description, Part C. That's referring to the IUSE solicitation. Your project and proposal should describe a knowledge base for the project. What are you basing what you're doing on? What literature, what data, where are you coming up with this? What's it building off of? You also should have a project evaluation plan, except for the capacity building. Capacity building was the 1 or 2 year proposals really to help you develop a proposal for one of the other levels of ICT. So other than that, your project in IUSE should have some sort of evaluation. This can occur from an evaluator, an external evaluator, or an advisory board. There's different ways to get that evaluation, and I think we'll get into more detail with that later. You should have some sort of relevant research questions. That's going to connect to generating knowledge from the project. So the first thing here is your project is based on knowledge. Parts 2 and 3, really 3, is what knowledge are you generating? And 4 gets into how are you sharing what you've done with other people, the research, the materials you develop, whatever your project is about. You need to be able to share it. And is there a need for sustainability? Is this project going to keep having an impact after the award ends? All right, some more language pulled from the solicitation. All projects are expected to increase knowledge about effective STEM education. This can be achieved different ways. You could have research questions. You could have a robust evaluation of the project activities or impacts or outcomes. So sometimes there's both. So you can have evaluation activities which align with the project activities, and that evaluation should be done by someone independent or external to the project. It could be someone at your institution or outside of your department. If there's an education researcher or a social scientist or somebody else that has the right expertise for this, but they shouldn't be necessarily a part of the project team. Well, I guess it says by qualified members of the project team, but they need to be independent somehow, that they're going to be able to give objective feedback. You can also have an advisory board that has some guiding questions that they're going to be able to give you formative and summative feedback along the way through the project and at the end. Back to engaged student learning, and we'll talk about the ICT again as well. So the focus is on improving student learning. This can be developing materials, developing methods of teaching. You are likely going to have an aim of engaging students, hence the name, somehow improving learning, hopefully increasing retention and preparedness in STEM. A few more examples of approaches. You could be using some sort of novel instructional method or some maybe relatively new or innovative technology in a classroom. You could be designing metrics of assessment to measure STEM teaching, STEM learning, student outcomes. You could be really focusing more on the faculty side of STEM undergraduate education, providing faculty with professional development opportunities. You could be doing discipline-based or interdisciplinary educational research. Any of those is appropriate for engaged student learning in IUSE. ICT, a few more ideas of what this is about and what can be appropriate. You could be focusing on improving evidence-based instruction in a department, in an institution, across a community or organization. Sometimes we get proposals from professional organizations in different disciplines. Sometimes it's a consortium of institutions, which can involve many different types of institutions. Project could be supporting efforts to build and understand systemic change in undergrad STEM education. Could be looking at, well, the theory of change here to transform institutions, that's actually a requirement of ICT, that there has to be a theory of change for how is what you're doing going to lead to what you expect it to, basically. And we have some resources in the solicitation for what theories of change might mean or involve, but every ICT proposal or project needs a theory of change. Range of approaches could be transformation of some sort of group or classification of courses, maybe like lower level math courses, or you're going to look across disciplines and try something new. You could be developing and or propagating communities of practice among faculty or other groups. You could be, again, examining change processes like systemic change within higher education. You could be identifying common elements across disciplines, programs, institutions, or systems. In this case, or this example, maybe support students from underrepresented groups in STEM. A little more on ICT for now. Systemic change could be departmental, institutional, multi-institutional, or across communities of STEM educators. Again, you have to describe a theory of change. What is the theoretical grounding for why you're doing what you're doing, basically? There should be research, literature to back up your activities, your research, your plan, your interventions, if you will. And usually for ICT, there has to be recognition that STEM higher education is complex. It's not easy to enact change across institutions, maybe even departments, much less communities. And so there needs to be a clear description of analyzing and addressing different organizational factors, different institutional policies, and so on. All right, so I've talked some more about engaged student learning, ICT, those different tracks. Let's talk maybe more about the scale and scope within the levels of those tracks. So sometimes to figure out, should this be a level 1 or a level 2? Think about your scale and scope. Scale is how many students or faculty or departments or so on are you bringing into this? Are you expecting to impact? Scope. What's the range of what you're doing? How many investigators, institutions, how many collaborative partners, how many disciplines are involved? These sort of things can inform what level you would be in. Engaged student learning level 1, again, 400,000 up to 3 years. These would be early stage or exploratory research projects, smaller scale, smaller scope, since it's level 1. ICT capacity building level 1. Again, maybe smaller for the level 1. It could be early stage, you're still figuring things out, piloting something, or just building on a pilot and seeing more what you know and what works. The capacity building track for ICT is a way for institutions who have not served as a lead institution on a prior ICT award to identify a project of interest and build capacity for that project. Some ideas for what could be the emphasis of a capacity building project. You could be supporting efforts to assess your institutional needs. Sometimes literature might identify a need or even potential solutions, but you really need to go to your institution and figure out what are the particular needs of your institution, your students, your faculty, and just use the other literature to inform maybe potential solutions to what you need. The capacity building project can really be helpful in deepening or establishing partnerships, departmental partnerships or collaborations, institutional partnerships or collaborations, finding those collaborators and really figuring out who's going to do what. It can be used to figure out what has your institution done before. Maybe something's gotten lost and you need to audit or see what's already been tried at your institution. A lot of capacity building projects might be about gathering data, institutional data or other data. It could be about learning about theories of change. And again, ICT projects, not the capacity building, but the level 1 or 2, have to have a theory in change. Identifying relevant institutional practices and policies, formulating plans for transformation. So it's all about building capacity. More key things to keep in mind. There are the new deadlines. It's a small change here, but it is different. Only the level 1 in capacity building for January, only level 2 and 3 for the July deadline. The difference is we used to have all levels in July. Now it's only level 2 or level 3. Replication studies are supported. You don't necessarily have to be doing something that's completely new. You can be replicating something else. For resubmissions or having multiple proposals from the same institution or PIs, just be sure that substantive changes have been made. You don't want to submit proposals or projects that are exactly the same or too similar. You don't want to replicate or build on something and basically be doing the same thing. We don't want to fund the same project more than once, but as long as there's new knowledge being generated, something innovative to it, then replication is totally fine. And resubmitting a proposal is also fine. Okay, replication or adaptation studies. So more about this. The purpose would be to broaden or deepen understanding of evidence-based practices. Replication studies should allow institutions to adopt, adapt, or improve curriculum materials, curricular design, practices, policies, pretty much any of these things we've been talking about that an IUSE project could have in it in some way that improves the learning environment and learning of undergrad STEM students. Replication in particular could be you're taking something that's been done and applying it to a different institution type or a different group of students and seeing what are the different outcomes or results. You could be applying it to different faculty, different disciplines. what's new about what you're doing, even if the actual activity or intervention is repeated from prior work. And it could be that you're modifying an intervention. It doesn't have to be an exact replication, that you're doing exactly the same thing, but just in a different institution. You can modify to better meet your local needs, your institutional needs, your students' needs. You just have to explain why you're changing what you're changing. Okay, we have a little true or false IUSE fact check. I've told you a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see what maybe has stood out or stuck with. Question 1. All proposals must have a research component. Do you think this is true or false? And I think we have, we have an event poll, so you should be able to see a poll option somewhere. For the audience. Okay. That one's already been triggered. Where it says question 1, all proposals must have a research component. So go ahead and fill out that poll. All right, since it's just true, false, I won't give too much time. Let's see if I can share the results. All right, I think I'm sharing results. I'm not sure where to see it. Oh, there we see. Okay, I see it now. Okay, so most people said it was true, but there was a bit of differing opinions here. This is false. All proposals must generate new knowledge, but it could be through research or through evaluation. So all proposals have to generate knowledge. I wouldn't necessarily say it has to be a research component, which is a bit confusing sometimes. But it could be separate research questions, it could be evaluation, it could be both. All right, next question. Funds for STEM curriculum development, programmatic pathways, learning resources, assessment instruments, and faculty development may receive funding. Give just a little time. Okay, let's see what you said. Almost everybody said true, and indeed, it is true. You can ask for funding for any of these things that listed. Question 3, proposals may focus on both STEM and non-STEM majors. I don't know that I touched on this too much in what I said, so this might be what do you think? And I can follow up with more explanation. All right, I'm going to gather the results, and the majority said false. It It's actually true, which I have definitely been emphasizing the STEM side of IUSE. Um, Now, what makes this true is that often non-STEM majors are in STEM classes, right, for general education or other reasons. Especially, if you have a pre-service teacher who wants to go into high school or middle school and teach math or science, they're going to be taking some STEM classes. You could have pretty much any major taking some sort of STEM classes. So sometimes our projects are just about the STEM courses, the STEM faculty who are teaching students in a wide variety of undergraduate majors. So the students don't have to be STEM majors, but the project has to be centered around STEM education. All right, question 4. Proposals may focus solely on STEM teacher preparation. So this isn't saying all proposals in IUSE focus on STEM teacher preparation. It's asking, can an individual proposal focus on STEM teacher preparation? All right, hopefully that was enough time. And 58% said true. The answer is true. Yep, they could be focused solely on STEM teacher preparation. They could also be any area of STEM undergraduate education. So STEM teacher prep is kind of a subset of what would be allowed. There should be question 5. Proposals should demonstrate a solid grounding in relevant literature on STEM teaching and learning. Does there need to be a literature base? Give you a minute. All right, let's gather results. And, oh, unanimous here. Everybody said true. True. All proposals should be based on some sort of evidence. Next question. Proposals should increase knowledge about effective STEM education through posing one or more research questions or through evaluation of project activities, impacts, or outcomes. All right, let's see the results. Almost unanimous this time, not quite. Most people said true, it is true. This relates back to question 1, where you could have research, you could have evaluation, or you have to have some sort of evaluation. It could be both. I think this is the last one. Proposal writers only need to reference the solicitation in their preparation. As you're preparing the proposal, as you're writing it, do you only need the solicitation? Okay, let's see what you said for this question. It looks, oops, I'm on the wrong one. Okay, it looks like most people said false. Indeed, the other reference I mentioned is the PAPG, the Proposal Award Policies and Procedures Guide. That applies to all NSF proposals as well. Sometimes there is something in a solicitation that overrules the TAPG, but if not, then the TAPG applies as well. All right, so which of the following may receive IUSE funding? Something that demonstrates a strong rationale for project objectives or incorporates and builds on educational practices that are demonstrably effective. Something that contributes to the development of exemplary undergraduate STEM education. Is it adding to the body of knowledge about what works in undergraduate STEM education and the conditions that lead to improved STEM teaching and learning? Is it measuring project progress and achievement of project goals? Which may receive IUSE funding? I'm going to gather results and share. Pretty split here. The answer is all of the above. Maybe it's a bit of a trick question. Any of those are applicable to IUSE. Okay, so let's take a little more time for Q&A. I know I didn't get to all the questions last go around, so I'll go back to, let's see, Jerry asked, are these research or implementation grants? They can be both. So it could be, really the whole focus is research. That would be okay, as long as it's, something about improving undergraduate STEM education. It could be the focus is more implementation. You still have an evaluation component that's going to help you generate knowledge, but it doesn't have to have separate research questions. Here I asked, when you're referring to STEM teachers, is that secondary level? It could be, it does not have to be secondary. It could be any level. We have funded projects for elementary pre-service teachers. They're still maybe taking math for elementary education or something like that that's going to be STEM related. So it does not have to be secondary level. Luis said, for example, better aligned across mathematics education coursework that is better aligned with Texas requirements for elementary teachers. I think this is connected to a previous question that I may have forgotten the exact wording of, but I think if you look through the solicitation, it seems like what you're doing aligns with the description there of engaged student learning, then it could work. It's, you make the case for how this is going to improve the teaching and learning of STEM students, or students in STEM, I should say. Wendy asked, how do you see noise capacity building grants differing from an ES? So the capacity building here would be an ICT, the ESL building capacity in higher education. So noise is our program where we fund scholarships or stipends, usually to pre-service teachers or fellowships for in-service teachers. So that's another program in our division. And there are capacity building grants there. They are similar to the capacity building grants for ICT in that they're really intended to help an institution or project team figure out what is needed for another proposal or project that's at the higher level. And so do you need to do a needs assessment? Do you need to do something else to collect data or develop collaborations and partnerships? What is that capacity? So it's similar, but the noise one is just if you're building up to another noise project, and the capacity building here is if you're building up to an ICT project. This is a yearly call. Again, the level ones are just in the January deadline in capacity building for January. The exact date might change year to year. You have to keep an eye in case new solicitations come out that change deadlines. But generally, level 1 capacity building is in January, and level 2, 3 will be in July. And Wendy said the ICT used to offer a maximum of $3 million. Is the new $2 million a hard cap now? Yes, that is one of the changes with the new solicitation. You could go up to $3 million previously if you were collaborating. Now it does not matter if you're collaborating. The cap is $2 million. Maybe I'll do one or two more questions, and then we'll keep going with slides. Juan asked, thank you very much. Regarding conducting undergraduate reach for pre-service teachers, maybe that was research, means students must do undergraduate research in a STEM topic. Oh, so there could be IUSE projects that involve pre-service teachers participating in undergraduate research in STEM. That could be it, but it does not have to be. There's many ways research can be incorporated in IUSE beyond just the IUSE project itself being a research project. It could be that they're doing course-based undergraduate research or some other research. I will also point out the NOISE program that I was just talking about actually has its own Dear Colleague letter, its own request for proposals to give STEM research experiences to pre-service teachers. And definitely send me an email if you're interested in that. If you're interested in STEM research experiences for pre-service teachers, that they're doing research in a STEM discipline as an undergrad, send me an email about that. That's actually, we have other funding opportunities for that in addition to IUSE. Jerry, I do see your questions, or at least I see where you said you don't think I can see your questions. So at least something's coming through. And one more question from Daryl. Would this funding differentiate between STEM and STEAM education? If you're not familiar, STEAM is where you have science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So it adds that A in to make it STEAM. IUSE, as I said in the beginning, it's a very broad program. And so even though STEM is in the name, if you had a project that combined STEM teaching and learning with the arts, that could very much be appropriate. And we have indeed funded and seen proposals in that realm. And so certainly STEAM could and does work in IUSE. Okay, let's go back to the slides, and I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer Ellis.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
I don't know if you'll be able to hear me, but I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm glad that you can hear me, Mindy, so that we'll go from there. And thank you. I am Jennifer Ellis. I am the co-lead for the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program that Minnie was mentioning, and one of the program officers who are supporting IUSE and focusing on the teacher prep track, but really helping the field know more about IUSE and the role it can play in enhancing pre-service STEM education. So when we're talking about IUSE projects, and looking at the research projects, we're looking for projects that predominantly focus on the ESL or ICT tracks, and you need to consider the ECR core research program for fundamental research. These research studies may explore, among other possibilities, creation, exploration, or implementation of tools, resources, and models, enhancement of student learning and attitudes through teaching strategies and effective curricula, diffusion of widespread practices through the community, and effective professional development. So it can be programs that also help enhance the faculty members who are teaching these undergraduate STEM teacher candidates or pre-service teachers, depending on which institution you're in, how you refer to that population. We also do provide funding for workshops and conferences. These proposals for workshop and conferences address critical challenges in undergraduate STEM education, and they may be submitted at any time. It's helpful if you email a program officer, either myself, Mindy, or Dr. Kathleen Bergen, about a particular conference, and submit a one-pager just first before you fill out a whole proposal to get a good feel if it's a good fit for what we're looking for, and if there are any things that need to be done to better address some of the needs of the field. So typically these proposals include budgets between $50,000 and $100,000, and proposals must submit again to one of the program officers in IUSE and EDU program before submission to determine appropriateness of the proposed workshop or conference for IUSE. ESL and ICT proposals must be transportable and make sure that they are something that other institutions will be able to hopefully adopt, and adopt your best practices to enhance pre-service STEM preparation on their campuses as well. Plans for encouraging, enabling, and facilitating use of findings or development by others, so really focusing on your dissemination plan to make sure you get the word out about what you've learned and how it has impacted the pre-service teacher preparation. Be evidence-based and include evidence-based as justification in the proposed topic and approach, substantial discussion for research literature, be knowledge generating and include plans for collecting, analyzing, and sharing data, have clear goals and objectives, and hopefully an evaluation plan that shows how you're going to measure these goals and objectives to determine the effectiveness of this particular intervention or interventions that you're proposing for the project. A description of how the evaluation results will be based for publication, and the basis of them, your theoretical framework that you're going to be using, and include objective feedback in a formative and a summative manner. So basic perspectives for IUSE and EDU projects. Projects should be both evidence-based and knowledge-generating. And so when we're talking about evidence-based, we're looking for projects that are building on prior work, and for knowledge-generating, what will be learned from the planned conduct of the project. And so really making sure that in your proposal, you're answering these two questions, and it's very clear what that answer is and the impact that your work, the previous work has had, and the current work that you're proposing will have. The perspective is okay for IUSE projects to serve the PI's institution, but they should also serve all of us, all in the field, by providing useful knowledge for broad constituencies of educators. So, you're making sure that you're very clear on how your project can be potentially replicated at other like institutions who have similar demographics of your school. So being very clear on what type of institution you have, so others can see how what you're proposing can help enhance their teacher preparation process as well. So we'll pause here for some Q&A, and I see it generating with some questions over here. Will we share our slides? I know that this is being recorded, so I think that may be just as good, and I guess we can determine. I'll look in my chat to see if the slides will be sent in addition to the recording. Can I recruit postdoc students under IUSE grant? Yes, if you can make it work in your budget, you can include that, but make sure if you have a postdoc that you have a postdoc mentoring plan. I thought I saw an ECL, hold on, I lost the question.
I just wrote a response to that one.
Okay.
I tried to address it before, and Wendy clarified, I think, so I wrote an extra response to that.
Okay, great. If the institution already received a level 1, must we submit? Minnie, you can help me with that one too. I don't. Must
You do
you?
not. No, you do not have to go up to another level. A lot of times, I think guys feel like they have to. If level 1 is still appropriate, you do not have to go up. We have other programs in the division where STEM, if you're familiar with that, there's a track 1 or level 1 there that is only for institutions who've never had one before, and after that you have to go to level 2. IUSE isn't like that. Your institution can have as many level 1s as you want.
The other question, does IUSE fund development of STEM courses for, and I can't see the whole, for undergraduates supporting STEMs and underrepresented groups? So the short answer is yes.
I wrote a quick response there too, but you can elaborate on that.
Okay, I don't see your, oh, that's why it's grayed out. Okay, but you answered that one. Our workshop proposals and conferences, the same format, same length, the same number of additional documents as other proposals. So it's not 15 pages, I don't believe. I think you can write, a proposal that long, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But it is, I don't want you to think that it's a one-page proposal. You would, the same process of submitting it through research.gov for a workshop proposal or a conference proposal. Instead of having, since it's not like a supplement award, you're making sure you put in the solicitation number to make sure, and then again, making sure that the program officer knows that you are submitting it, so they'll know to be on the lookout for your proposal. But it can't be any more than 15 pages, but whatever it would be helpful to really bring home the fact on why you would need funding for this, I think is important to bring. So if you're collaborating with other institutions and other nonprofits or school districts, having those letters of collaboration, it doesn't hurt to include that with your workshop and conference proposal.
Can I add to that just a little?
Sure.
That other resource that I brought up besides the solicitation, the PAPG, the Proposal Award Policies and Procedures Guide, that does describe what should go into conference and workshop proposals, at least to some degree. There might still be some things that you want to follow up on, but there are guidelines, and like Jennifer said, it's up to 15 pages, really similar to other proposals. You just have to get program officer approval.
Yep, so I see there were two questions about the proposal and the proposal link, and as Minnie said, the PAPG is really the best guide to use, and you would make sure it won't steer you wrong. It would give you exactly what you need to include in there to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's that are expected for any submission. Can you explain, and again for this question, can you explain what a doctoral mentoring plan means? Is this a requirement if a postdoc is on the research team? And so that also is included in the PAPG as well. So that would probably be the best way to understand what is required for it. But if you do have a postdoc, that is a requirement for you to include that in your proposal submission. So it is a separate document that is not included, in the 15-page proposal. You can mention, the postdoc and the role that they're going to play, but you are required to include a postdoc mentoring plan if you're including a postdoc on your team. So I think, Mindy, that was all the questions that I could see for this round.
Yep,
so
that's all I see for now.
I'll jump back to the presentation. So some tips for success, and Mindy and I will tag team on this portion as well to make sure that you are fully abreast of any tips for success for this the IUSE proposal. So build on what is known, summarize published literature, and defining a starting point that extends the prior work. Include a well-designed plan to gather the data. Specify methods of analysis that will be employed to answer the questions posed. Include mechanisms to evaluate the success of the project. Explain how findings and materials will be shared. address the sustainability of projects' efforts, collaborate as needed with other investigators, institutions, or communities, and make the intellectual merit and broader impacts obvious. And so as you're looking at this slide, there are clear words that are underlined and highlighted even to kind of further emphasize that these are some of the areas that we strongly recommend that you spend time on. I know 15 pages sometimes for some could seem like a lot, but for those of you who are, have submitted NSF proposals before, 15 pages can be limiting. So be strategic on the real estate in which you have, but don't overlook this area. The evaluation, dissemination plan are not something that you should just skim over, but make sure it's very clear on how all of these play together with supporting your project and making sure that it's very clear why NSF should invest in you, because you're, have very clear questions that you're asking and have a very clear way of determining and keeping the data, be it qualitative or quantitative, and ways to analyze it and then disseminate that to and help enhance the field. Merit review considerations. The following elements should be considered in the review for both intellectual merit and broader impacts. What is the potential for the proposed activity to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields? What will we learn from your project and benefit society or advance desired social outcomes, broader impacts, who will be impacted or affected by your work? Really looking at, as the previous slide, making sure it's very clear to the reviewers, what is your intellectual merit, what is your broader impact, and answering those questions. What will we learn from this project? Who will be affected or impacted by this project? And really selling and doing a good job of sharing who that community would be. To what extent does the proposed activity suggest and explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts? And so here, making sure you're really clear on what the answer to this question or these questions that are listed on this slide. Some examples of intellectual merit. Give context for your research. Is it part of a larger program? What are you building on? What are you building towards? Will it lead to new questions, techniques, or insights? What's the new idea? Why is now the right time? Why are you the right person or persons, group, institutions to do this type of work? Are there applications or connections to other fields? Crypto, medicine, looking at what is the current needs of your local, regional, national, international community, and what implications does all of this have to that? Your broader impacts, mentoring, undergraduate or graduate students, postdocs, making sure it's clear what that mentoring plan is, if there's training involved with the mentorship, who's providing that training, how will that training be evaluated. Education, advising research, developing new courses, writing textbooks, outreach activities. Some examples are math circles, work in prisons, public talks, popular writing. Thinking, how can we expand this list? When you're talking about outreach activities, what does that look like, and how can you expand the offerings that we're suggesting here? Broadening participation with organizations, nonprofits, community-based organizations, different schools, or on your own. Professional service, organizing conferences, editorial boards, professional societies, things of that nature. Important, educational focused projects often have a hard time disentangling intellectual merit and broader impacts, but you need to separate them out in your proposal. Again, make it very clear to the reviewers which is which, so they don't have to guess, or that you don't want them to overlook something that you think is very clear. Make it very explicit. No proposal section. So the PAPG, reviewing also the solicitation to make sure that you have everything that is required in the proposal, and it's very clear where everything is. So this is a list of everything that is required, and I won't read this portion to you, but as you go into research.gov, it will be asking you for your submission of these items. And as I know there was some discussion of the postdoctoral mentoring plan. As you can see, that is listed here if it's applicable. Documentation of collaboration. Documentation of collaboration efforts are made through letters of collaboration. And so what these are it should be limited to stating the intent of the collaborant and should not contain endorsements or evaluations to the proposed project. The PAPG is your guide for the format of these letters. So I know in the past, letters looked a little bit different. Make sure you're current on what is expected for these letters of collaboration. Submitting a proposal. Mindy, can you take over from this slide for me for a second?
Yep, no problem. So submitting a proposal is not a quick or always easy process. You want to give yourself plenty of time to get your proposal ready, get it submitted. Don't wait until the last minute to submit. We have very hard deadlines on when the proposals are due. It's usually at 5 o'clock local time, and if you try to submit it at 5:01, you have to wait a year. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want to push back your schedule a year just because you missed that deadline. Write your proposal, make your budget, follow the guides, the solicitation. Make sure you're in contact with your institution-sponsored research office or whoever at your institution kind of does the grant stuff and actual grant submissions. Each institution should have an authorized organization representative, AOR, and they actually do kind of the final submission stuff. You probably also have to send it around campus and get signatures and get things worked out and get approved for the proposal as well. Please know that it is not an individual that gets funded. Even if you did pretty much all the work to write the proposal and get it all together and plan it all out, the actual award goes to the institution. And so it is your institution that is considered the awardee. So if you were to leave the institution, they have the power of deciding what happens with a project. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Not every proposal is going to get funded, and especially not funded the first time it's submitted. But you'll get, hopefully, some really useful feedback. You'll get reviews from a panel of reviewers. You'll get feedback from a program officer, have some advice on what you can do to improve the proposal and project, and you can resubmit again.
Thanks, Mindy. I'm back. Some additional tips for success. Consult the program solicitation along with the PAPG, and we keep saying this and we keep hammering this because it is essential to making sure that you're really addressing the needs of the call, which are listed in the program solicitation. Make sure the deadline of submission day is not the first time you log into research.gov. Not you nor your institution. So making sure that you are comfortable using research.gov, because many of us have been so used to Fastlane that there is a difference, and so we want to make sure you are comfortable with using research.gov and not adding additional stress on the deadline. Alert the sponsored research office now if you are anticipating submitting for the January submission deadline, to make sure that they're aware and that they have you on their calendar and then they keep you abreast of when they would like things submitted to them, so you can start planning accordingly from there. Follow the page and font size limits. You know, we've heard horror stories from folks who've submitted at 4:50 and realize, like, oh my gosh, things aren't right, and by the time they get it together, it's 5:30, and there's nothing we can do at that point. So, as Mindy mentioned, waiting to the last minute can cause heartache for a year's worth of work that now has to wait a year plus. Be aware of other projects and advances in the field to ensure that what you're doing is new and novel to help advance the field. Make sure you cite the literature and that your citations are accurate. Provide details. Discuss prior results, especially if it's NSF funding of the PI and anyone on the team, and share what those results, not just the fact that you had NSF funding, but what were those results and what are the lessons learned from that that would help enhance this particular proposal that you are submitting. Include the evaluation plan and timelines and benchmarks, and make that as clear as possible, so it's the reviewers can see that not only have you proposed a novel idea, but you actually know how to implement it and of course evaluate it. So the NSF proposal process includes phase 1, the proposal preparation and submission. So, you know, we're kind of at the phase 1 area for phase 1-1. The opportunity has been announced, and you're, you know, contemplating what that process is going to look like for you for what the proposal would be. The proposal is submitted and the proposal is received. And then phase 2 is where Mindy and I step in with a proposal review and processing. So the reviewers are selected. There's a peer review process. The program officer makes the recommendation, and the division director reviews it. And phase 3, the awarding process. The business, does the review, and the award is finalized. And as you can see, that there are some tentative dates and times for each one of those phases. If you submit in January, the likelihood that you'll hear from us in February is slim to none because of all of the processes that have to go through for that. So be patient with the process, but know that it is working through from phase 1, from box 1 to 9 during this time. Program resources. There's some helpful resources. The NSF Proposal and Award Policy and Procedure Guide. So we keep calling it the PAPG, but that's what that means. Solicitation and the FAQ and webinar resources. So this experience and hopefully the Q&A and anything else that you need, you can also we're resources that you can tap into as well. The merit review overview, that's an option on our website. And the Common Guidelines for Education Research and Development site is also another resource that may be helpful in your preparation. Complementary EHR, or now DUE programs with a teacher preparation focus are the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. There's a track 4, and then as Mindy mentioned, we also have a Dear Colleague letter that may be of interest to you that you can explore and contact Mindy if you have more questions about that effort. The EDU Core Research and Advanced Technological Education, ATE, are some other projects that may be of interest to you. Know that we are here because we want you. We want you and your projects and your ideas to help advance the field of STEM teacher preparation. So consider, and we want you in other capacities as well. We want you to serve as a reviewer. Many have found the reviewing process. I know that those who have served on my review panels recently thanked me for the experience because they said they learned so much about the NSF proposal process, and you can actually see from a reviewer standpoint, oh, maybe that's why my proposal didn't get funded because it was missing some other pieces, or as you're going through the process, it'll say, oh, this is really where the niche is. I can see from these proposals that there's, oh, this is, it really can help you in more ways than you think in serving as a reviewer. So please fill out the IUSE reviewer survey on the IUSE website, or contact either one of us to express your interest. If you are submitting in January, you wouldn't be able to serve as a reviewer, but you would be able to serve as a reviewer for our July submission. So please go ahead and fill out the IUSE reviewer survey, even if you're interested and you can't serve in January. Please feel free to contact us as well, and our contact information is listed here. And thank you for participating and for your interest in improving undergraduate STEM education, particularly related to pre-service STEM teacher preparation. We are, so thankful for your interest and your time, and we're going to open up the floor to our last session for Q&A. I know Mindy probably was in here answering questions. Are there any new questions that you may have that we could address? We will practice good wait time for at least a minute or so.
Jennifer, you want to go back to that?
I'll go back to your slide. Yep, I'll go back here so you can see our email addresses.
There is a question about, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say the conference proposals are kind of like a rolling admission. There's not a deadline for them. Some people do submit them during the January or July submission, but we do take them at any time. But again, as mentioned, I would definitely recommend that you send a one-pager and an email to a program officer, either Kathleen, myself, or Mindy, before you write a full conference proposal.
Yeah, and I'll add to that with, I think the PAPG gives some advice on how early you should submit the conference proposal compared to when you actually want to do the conference. I don't remember exactly what it says, but what I'll say is at least a year in advance, because we have to, as Jennifer pointed out, we have this kind of long process that we have to go through when we get a proposal. Conference proposals don't necessarily have to go through the entire process, depending on how much money you're asking for. If it's less than $50,000, it's not going to take as long as if it's more than $50,000, for instance. But give yourself plenty of time in case it takes us a while. You don't want to be scrambling or having to push back the conference from when you expected to do it.
And and I will say, how can I say this? That it does, maybe submitting around the same time the other proposals come in may not necessarily be the best time. So kind of be more strategic and have a conversation with the program officer, and they can give you a better gauge of their bandwidth to handle reviewing your proposal as well.
Yeah. I see there's a question about, did we increase the budget from $300,000 to $400,000 in level 1? Yes, that is correct for both engaged student learning and for ICT the budget increased from 300 to 400,000 in level 1. Kind of the offsetting of that is if you the maximum budget for ICT level 2 is now $2 million, whereas before that used to be $3 million if you were a collaborative project. So level 1 went up, level 2 ICT kind of went down a little. That's with the latest solicitation.
And there was a question about how long is the review process from submission to award. On average, 6 months. So that's the target is about 6 months from submission to award. And it could be longer, just depending on, if I go back to that slide, I can't remember. I can go back to it here. So just the proposal review process itself is 6 months, and then the award processing could be at least 30 days, so 7 months. Yeah, 8, but around that 6 to 8 months is typical.
Yeah, and know that decisions don't all go out at the same time. It just depends on when we're able to get to a specific proposal. So both declines and awards get processed at varying stages and times.
And I see a question about professional development workshop for teachers. Yes, but ideally it should be, and this is another thing you may want to talk to Mindy about, for the noise call for the noise DCL as well, but making sure you include undergraduate students, the pre-service teachers, since this is for enhancing or improving undergraduate STEM education. So, having in-service teachers could be fine, but the main focus should be pre-service STEM teachers. We want to thank you for your time and your interest in the IUSE program and looking at different ways to enhance STEM pre-service teacher preparation, and for taking the time to listen to Mindy and I, and we look forward to receiving many proposals from you in January and or in July for IUSE, noise, or other efforts that are focused on enhancing STEM pre-service teacher preparation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.